It's a cold December evening in Rupperswil, Switzerland, a town that would be forever tainted by this horrendous crime. Previously known as a small, sleepy town in Switzerland, is now known for being the home of one of the country's most gruesome murder cases. A 34-year-old man who had been identified as Thomas N. would later plead guilty to the horrific acts that he committed on that December night. Acts committed on a family that should have never been visited by the Beast of Rupperswil. Hey everyone, so in today's installment, I did want to tell you guys about the case of the Beast of Rupperswil, a true crime case that happened back in 2015 in a small town called Rupperswil in Switzerland. The case, in all honesty, is very disturbing and upsetting, so I do want to put a disclaimer right now that the contents of this case are extremely upsetting and do contain instances of SA. Again, I did want to put up that disclaimer because this case is probably one of the worst that I have covered on this channel because of, the severity of the case and just how horrific it actually is. On the morning of December 21st, the Schauer family had been preparing for the Christmas season. Given it was so close to the date, they were decorating the house and putting presents up under the trees and, just getting into the Christmas spirit as, it's December 21st and Christmas is only a few days away. And all seemed fine at the family at the time. The family consisted of the mother, Carla, who was 48 years old at the time, and her two sons, which were Davin, who was 13 years old, and Dion, who was 19 years old. And Dion did have his own girlfriend that he did bring to the house, to celebrate in the festivities, and she was 21 years old, and her name was Simona. And this also does include the father of the family, which his name is not included, or at least anywhere that I could find, although a father was present in the household. So the entire family was enjoying themselves until the kids' father, Carla's husband, had to leave the house. And it is unspecified why Carla's husband had to leave the house, although it can be assumed that he just left to go, do his shift at work because he wouldn't return until, at the very end of the day. So the children's father left the house, and this just left the mother and her two kids, as well as Dion's girlfriend, Simone. Davin, again, being the youngest of the bunch, only being 13 years old. And as Carla was on the phone with one of her friends, her phone call was interrupted by an unknown number. And when she answered the phone, it was a person presenting themselves as being Davin's school psychologist. The man on the phone did go into detail, telling Carla how her son, Davin, did need psychiatric attention, and the person again was presenting themselves as the school's psychologist. So of course, Carla took this call very seriously. And then the supposed psychiatrist on the phone told Carla if he could meet her later at her own home to discuss Davin's needs. And Carla, of course, being concerned for the well-being of her son, she agreed. And the man on the phone told Carla that he could be there in under 20 minutes, although the man was already outside of the house, watching Carla and her children. The man then proceeded to knock on the door and greeted Carla 20 minutes after their phone call, once again presenting himself as Davin's school's psychiatrist, even though he wasn't, even going as far as to make a fake business card stating Dr. Sebastian, school psychologist. So here it becomes very evident that this person was, planning this for a long time and made his way inside of their home. Because in reality, this man who was posing as a school psychiatrist was actually a man named Thomas N., a man that had been stalking the entire family for weeks now and had finally made his way inside of their home. Although Thomas didn't reveal this to the family right away, he kept the ruse going on for a little bit longer until he got his bearings inside of the home, because the sick man was about to do the unspeakable. And that's when Thomas got up, pulled out a knife, and began yelling at the family, ordering them to stay still. And that's when he grabbed Davin, the youngest boy, again only being 13 years old. He held the knife up to his face, again demanding that nobody move, and then ordering Carla to tie up Dion and his girlfriend Simone so that they wouldn't try to stop him, telling Carla that if she didn't listen to his orders, he would end Davin's life right then and there. Truly a deranged man. And so she did what he asked to protect her own son. At least that's what she thought she was doing. Because with Dion and Simone tied up, Thomas had complete control of the situation, again being the one wielding a knife, and he also had a gun in his back pocket. And then came Thomas's next order, which was to order Carla to leave the house and go directly to her bank and withdraw all of the money that she had in her account, and telling her that if she did anything funny, like go to the police or tell somebody about the hostage situation that her family was in, that by the time she got back, her entire family would be dead. So Carla went to the bank, withdrew all of the money, didn't tell anybody about the situation that she was in, and promptly headed back to the house. And while Carla was at the bank doing all of this, Dion and Simone and Davin were all still being held hostage. And with Dion and Simone tied up, and Davin being the 13-year-old boy that Thomas had a hold of, there wasn't much that they could do. And I do not want to explicitly state what Thomas did to Davin, although he did it in front of the others. The man was a complete monster, and the entire situation is extremely tragic. And by the time that Carla got back to the house, Thomas had ordered Carla to tie up Davin, the 13-year-old boy. And after Davin was tied up, he proceeded to tie up Carla as well. And one by one, Thomas walked around the room and slit each of the victims' throats, blood splattering all over the festivity-decorated home. And Thomas would still do one last thing before he left the house. He lit a match and dropped it at the crime scene, subsequently lighting the entire house in flames. And then he just left. The entire house was engulfed in flames, smoke that could be seen miles away. And eventually firefighters did see the smoke, and they arrived at the scene and successfully were able to put out the fire. And being a small town like this one, it is very likely that the firefighters knew whose house this was and were deeply concerned for the family. And upon extinguishing the flames, firefighters ventured into the lost home and uncovered the blackened remains of the family. These horrific murders immediately launched a massive hunt to find the disturbed individual who showed no remorse for this loving family. And this did include the highest ever reward for a killer at £75,000 or roughly $86,000 for information leading to the arrest of the individual. It was up to the authorities to find the man responsible for these horrendous crimes. And it did take about 5 months for the police to eventually find Thomas. After months of research and a trap that they had set for the killer, it had all finally paid off. The first thing that they had to do, however, when conducting this intensive search is that they had to conduct a search method that determines which mobile phones were connected to the transmitter mast near the crime scene at the time of the crime. And there were about 30,000 phones included in this search, and Thomas's phone was included in this search, but trying to narrow down to one phone out of 30,000 was pretty difficult. So what they needed to do was narrow down the search, and what they were going to do is to utilize the search engine Google. And they wouldn't be doing this like how you and I would use Google. The way that they would do it is that they were going to use it to obtain all of the IP addresses of computers that were searching up the family during the period before the crime. And obviously this kind of information isn't available to the public, so investigators had to apply for permission from Google to access this kind of information. But because this was such a widespread search at this point, everybody wanted to discover who the killer was, and they wanted this person brought to justice. So Google basically immediately gave the investigators the information that they did need to find this killer. And with this information combined with the telephone search, they were able to narrow it down to Thomas, who had left a clear data trail from searching up the family weeks before the actual crime took place. because again, not only was Thomas stalking the family for an extended period of weeks, but he also was, searching the family up on the internet. And using these searches, they were able to track it back to Thomas. So now the only thing that investigators had to do was obtain one more piece of crucial evidence. They needed a piece of Thomas's DNA in order to link it to the piece of DNA that was found at the crime scene. Because at this point they basically had their suspect, they pretty much knew that it was Thomas, but they did need that piece of indisputable evidence to finally pin down this murderer. Just one more piece of hard evidence to put this monster away. And so what investigators did is that they set up a traffic control stop in an area that they knew Thomas would be going through. And so when they stopped Thomas, he was given an alcohol test, and they had him blow into that little tube that tests your alcohol levels. And after they stopped Nick, they let him go. But now they had what they needed, the saliva from the tube. The tube was immediately sent to the lab for examination, and when it was compared with the DNA that was found at the crime scene, it was a direct link. Thomas was immediately apprehended after they had this information. They caught him at a Starbucks, and when they caught him, he had a backpack on him. And in that backpack, he had cable ties, adhesive tape, an old Swiss Army pistol, and handcuffs made from rope. And these were clearly interpreted as signs that he had plans to commit another crime of similar nature. Thomas was brought into court, and authorities now had an overwhelming amount of evidence to finally convict Thomas, the person that took the lives of 4 individuals that did nothing wrong. And during the court, what is very strange is that when he was finally caught, Thomas confessed basically immediately, confessing to the murders of the 4 people he killed, as well as burning down the house. And when authorities searched his computer, they said they found CP on it, as well as evidence that led them to believe that he was targeting 2 other families in the same neighborhood. And what's even more sick about this entire case is that in his notebook, he had the names of 11 boys written in his notebook. Names of children ages between 11 through 14. And to just emphasize the kind of monster that this person was, is that another thing is that Thomas would spend a lot of his time training and coordinating a football youth team. And when I found this piece of information, I was just left in complete disgust about how this monster was let around children in his day-to-day. In March of 2018, Thomas was finally put behind bars for murder, extortion, hostage taking, SA with a child, and arson, among other counts. He was sentenced to life in imprisonment. But yeah, that pretty much does it for this installment, but I did want to take this moment to thank my beautiful Patreons: Eternal Daisy, Inspector Dom, Miguel Mejia, Notabot, Stenifers, Kareem, Dylan, Mascaries, Robin, Anna, Cubery, Tensity, Estenia, Bleh, and 10 Tiny Bees. Thank you guys so much. You guys are truly amazing. And yeah, that pretty much does it. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. It's always super great, and I did want to leave off on this video saying that please stay safe. Always let people know where you are, because that is very important. The world can be a very dark place sometimes, and yeah, I want you guys to stay safe, please. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Love you.